Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Discourse for today, Friday, January 20th, 2023. I'm your host, Tristan. We already made it to January 20th. To sink it in that this year is not even 3 weeks old at this point, which feels like we've had like a year and a half in the last 3 weeks, so it's wild. This month has been so busy. Holy. Usually January is a boring month that I feel like takes forever, and this one has just shot by for me. I don't know about anybody else. But hello, my name is Tristan. I am the host of the YouTube channel Step Back, which is what you're probably watching this on right now. And I am the co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens, which you can find at probsnotaliens.com or at Nebula for both of them. I stream on Fridays at noon. If you want to watch my work, you can go to nebula.tv/stepback. If you use that link and you sign up for Nebula, I get a little bit of a kickback on that. I'd be very appreciative. But furthermore, you get access to all sorts of really cool stuff, including early releases of and bonus content for my videos and double and episodes of the podcast a week early. So, if that's the thing you want, do it up. If you want to support my work in a sort of more laid back way, there's patreon.com/stepbackhistory. There's if you have Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime subscriptions very much help out. So if you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime subscription per month. If you choose Step Back, I'd be very grateful. And of course, if you got anything like Super Chats, bits, and Twitch subscriptions, they're all, welcome and appreciated, not necessary. But I will definitely say thank you if you decide to throw a few bucks my way, because I got a lot of things to pay for. My latest video is called The Political Compass Must Die. I know that it's been out for almost 2 months at this point, so probably everyone's seen it who's going to see it. But that is the latest video. It is still out there. I apologize for the slow thing. I'm very much hoping that next week people with Nebula and patrons are going to see a video. At this moment, I am knee-deep in editing. I actually will probably end up spending a couple... Well, I don't know. After this stream is over, I'm probably going to go for a walk. And then after that, whatever time is left between then and when I'm going out with my wife... I'll spend doing more editing because I'm doing the B-roll right now. But the video is going to be probably about 35 minutes long. So I'm going through it, trying to see if I could add some jokes and graphics. And I'm waiting on one more voiceover to get everything together and ready to go. I'm waiting on, So next week, I'm hoping to get something good out for the patrons, and then we'll see with everything else. I got stuff I gotta make. Turns out that my content schedule is very packed. Anyways, it's neither here nor there. My next video is called There Have Always Been Trans People, so I'm excited. I think that people are really gonna like it. If you want to submit questions to this or future streams, if I remember correctly, we don't actually have a ton of questions, so can submit it at that link I put in the chat, or if you ever want to, you can just go here to stepbackhistory.com/stream question and submit it there. And if this is your first time watching the stream, make yourself known in the chat. We have a very welcome and supporting chat community that is always happy to have new regulars, so if you're here, say hello, join the crowd. So glad to see you now. Thank you, Ninetails Cosmic Fox. Much appreciated. Yeah. So that's been my life, is desperately trying to get this video done. This month has been wild because this was the first month where my son is in daycare. And I have to say this, we are just now finishing out the 3rd week of him being in daycare, and he has yet to go to a full week of daycare. Because he's gotten sick now twice. It's absolutely wild. and it's just like nonstop. So trying to get work done while all of that is happening. The giant rats are roaming the halls of the dwarf fortress again? What? What does that mean? What sucks with a lot of these illnesses is that if it's something that's not just a cold, the kid has to go to a doctor before they can return. So, like, the thing he's got right now, he's already seemed to have gotten better from. He had a little bit of a rash yesterday, and now he's, like, a little bit better. And but he has to go to the doctor, and the closest time that the doctor can see him is on Monday morning. So, he's just home today. But other than that, he's fine. Dwarf Fortress came out on Steam. Yes, it did. Very good times. Ah. Because cancer? I'm so confused. Anyways. Things are going all right here. I just need, what's it called? I'm trying to do a Nebula first thing, which is where my videos are released one release ahead. So that if you watch a video on YouTube, I can be like, hey, the next video is already out, and it's out on Nebula, so you can sign up at nebula.tv, etc., etc. It's the thing all the Nebula creators are trying to do this year, and I am trying to not go a month without making a video, and at the same time make a video ahead of schedule, which is going to be tough. But after this video is done, I got a video on cultural Marxism. That's going to be the next video after the one I'm working on. And the next one after that, one of the Dwarf Fortress developers got cancer. That's why it got Steam release. Oh, yeah. I knew they had a health problem. I did not know it was cancer. Yeah, so there's all that. I wanted to try a D&D session with the storytelling cousin of ChatGPT, but every DM I talk to says it's a waste of time. Your thoughts? So, this is going to be a particularly spicy take from me, because it does seem like the general consensus at the moment is to reflexively hate anything that has to do with artificial intelligence whatsoever. And I have found that that AI work has been very useful in a lot of different use cases in my videos and in my like work, but also in like my fun time as well. And I've used it. I used it to help me a lot with like building the next script that I'm working on. I used it to kind of help me with like developing ideas for titles and thumbnails for videos and things like that. And my next, and I've also used it for DMing. I've used it for helping me think of encounters and things to put in dungeons and things like that. And I think I had a relatively successful dungeon crawl that I built out of it with some really good. I kind of wrote like the basics of a room, a couple prompts, and then it wrote like, really descriptive box text and stuff like that, which I thought was really useful. I don't think it'd be useful like at the table, but it's definitely useful when like prepping stuff, I think. But I don't think an AI could actually do like, if it couldn't do DMing in like a sort of like, it kind of takes away from like, RPG's primary point, which is that it's a social activity that like people enjoy with their friends, and the fact that it's real and you can do anything is like a big part of what makes it good. Yeah. So, and yeah, of course, everything with D&D that's been going on. But I also know that my viewers aren't all RPG nerds, so that's me. Which AI tools am I actually using? So there are several. The first one is ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT for a lot of stuff. So that's the main thing I use for like helping me like work on some especially stuff to do with like script and like brainstorming and stuff like that. I think is really good. As far as other tools, there's a lot of AI tools now in Adobe Premiere that I've gotten a lot of stuff with. So that has been working out really well. I've gotten some really great. One second. Just gotta ban somebody from my chat. There we go. So it's fun. It's interesting. I think that there's a lot to get out of it, and I know that like right now the sort of, especially because of basically like it seems like there's a sort of thinking in some leftist circles that because specifically the AI art training sets were has a lot of like pieces taken without permission, which I am obviously against. That somehow two things. That one, if we just talk shit about all forms of machine learning enough, that we can somehow get the toothpaste to go back into the tube. And two, that there is absolutely no use in everything about artificial intelligence, which is a thing that like involves like forms of like linear algebra that most people don't really know all that well, and just like calling things like plagiarism or whatnot. It's just like I think that there's a lot of issues there's a lot of issues that have to do with the fact that that we don't have really the right language to talk about artificial intelligence tools at this point, and I think that is the main issue, and so we're defaulting to treating it like it's any other sort of form of technology. And I think that in many ways it's trying to stop a development like that is, one, not going to work out very well, but two, it's just like, I don't know. I think I'm just talking in circles at this point, but yeah, I do think that there are uses for it. There are places where it's still not useful. There are and I've experimented with a lot of them, and it's really helped me like get into stuff. But when it comes to the AI art thing, that is a complex topic, because it really it really depends upon what you think a training set does, but that's a different conversation. So I also know that like AI art stuff is, in my mind, more so compared to text, it is encroaching into some complicated territory about copyright and ownership, and the line between inspiration and copying and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know where that sort of line is in a way, especially because there's in many ways it is if it is going to be widespread, which it looks like it's just going to be, like there's no real walking back on that at this point, then what it is going to do is kill a lot of sort of small-time commission art, which is going to make sort of small-time indie artists not really able to continue doing their work. Not to say that there's it's still not, the technology's still not there 100% at this point, and there's still a lot of things like eyes of a designer that a real artist has that an AI does not. But that's, to me, that's a matter of time, and the things that are already coming out are pretty impressive. So I think that and using it like I think that so it's complicated. The problem is that it's a complicated topic, and on top of that, it is a new form of technology that we don't really have the language to articulate. And so to really talk about it in an intelligent way, we're going to have to really like get philosophical and break down certain things. That's why like I've kind of stayed away from the topic, because I think that a really good video on AI art is going to need to be almost a work of philosophy, specifically in the breaking down of what is ownership, can a piece of computer software be inspired by something and learn from something to make its own work, and where is the line between like, if a silicon computer does it, it's bad, but if a jelly brain human does it, it's good. Like, you know, one of the major complaints that I've seen about a lot of the AI art stuff is like that you know, you can make it so that it just copies the style of another person because it read all of it did like a learning set off of all of their artwork. So you could say like, I want a piece of art in the style of Joe Blow, and Joe Blow didn't agree to have their art get put into the training set. But it can make art in the style of Joe Blow because the creators who basically taught it did it anyway. But like, is it considered unethical if, say, you were a commission artist who was told to do a piece of art in the style of Joe Blow and you did that in a fairly convincing fashion? So basically, if you did the same thing as an AI art program, but you did it as a human, does that distinction make it better or worse or the same? And I think that when you get into those kind of questions, then a lot of the ways that we think about it, you realize that some of the ways that we think about this we're thinking it. We're not. I'm not saying like I'm not trying to blame anybody or think this is an extremely complicated thing to sort of pick apart. But obviously, I think that it shows that we're in a lot of places where we're just not approaching it with the right questions. And the problems that it is creating don't have solutions in the ways that we want them to. And I don't know what the solutions are, but I know that the sort of like, just, you know, if we just try and if we just try to really just try to kill the technology that already exists and has tons of money going into it and a lot more in the future, that it'll somehow just die and then we can celebrate and live our lives without this technology that's revolutionary in many ways. So that's, you know, that's sort of like, we're missing a lot there. Like for example, artificial intelligence is sort of like a real, like kind of a buzzword. The real word is machine learning. And machine learning is very much like, if you want to know about the math behind it, if you want to get really fucking crunchy about it, what these things use is basically like multi-dimensional vector space. So if you are please, somebody in the chat tell me the second that I am going into stuff that is annoying or that they don't care about anymore. So basically in linear algebra, there is something called vectors. And vectors are basically a way to measure something that has an origin and a direction, if that makes sense. So vector is like, this object began here and is going in this direction. Hopefully that makes sense, right? But the thing is that when you get into mathematics and things like geometry, you can then have vectors that are in more than 3 dimensions going on at any given time. And there's a bunch of like mathematical equations that are designed to be like, take 3 vectors and then take one vector and figure out if it is closer to vector A than to vector B. Okay? So say you've got like one vector here, and then a vector here, and you can calculate whether this one is closer to this vector or this vector. So that's sort of the basics of like, they're used a lot in 2D game development. Yeah, what's it called? Vectors on a Cartesian plane are like some of the basis behind like most of like computer science. So So think about it that way, right? And then if you can find a way to basically take a whole bunch of data, like if you were to take, say, text or art or something like that, and you're able to express that as a vector by basically having an origin and a bunch of directions, which is based on like, hundreds and hundreds of dimensions at any given time. Because it's like, you have to start breaking your brain because it's not really working in the way that we think about geometry anymore, where it's like, it's going in this vector, but it's moving in like 150 different directions at the same time because it's using more dimensions than we have in reality. And you can still, but the thing is, mathematically, you can still take two vectors or three vectors and compare them with each other in a way that like you can see which one is closer to the other. So if you get a big old data set and you say, you take like, millions and millions and millions of pictures off of the internet, and you get somebody to go through them. Well, there's different ways to do it, but you get somebody to go through a bunch of them and, write what this is, or, even scrape the sort of stuff around it and take the text around it to sort of give it a bit of like text metadata to say what it is, right? Then you create sort of like this just big database of all of these different vectors. And then what you do is you feed something else into that, and then it can start to figure out which one is it? Is it this or this? And it starts to recognize which one it is. And then you can label that one. So that's sort of like the basics of machine learning type stuff. But then you get into like antagonistic machine learning algorithms where you have two of these things. One is trying to figure out whether or not a picture is fake or real, and the other one is trying to figure out how to make the best, least fake-looking picture that they can. And the two sort of go at each other and learn and develop over time. And this is called an antagonistic machine learning system or something like that. Anyways, they both do that, and over like thousands, millions, and millions of iterations, they get a lot better at it. Then you so that's like the sort of like that's like the basics of it, right? And then you have this this program that if you then fed into it a sort of bit of text or of like a prompt, basically, right? Then it will go through its different bits of sets and then usually take a picture that is like noise, like static. And it'll take the text you're going for, and through the sort of vector thing, start to piece together like, well, like, these pixels, like if this pixel is here, then the pixel next to this will look like this, the pixel next to this will look like this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until it builds something out. And because like the way these things get a lot more sophisticated is that they find new metrics to measure in order to make the vectors more sophisticated and work better. So like edge detection, colors, like different types of things like that. Anyways, that is sort of a part of like how that aspect of it works. And so then the question then becomes like, is it plagiarism if in order to populate that vector space, you used learning material from the model that the creator of that learning material did not give permission to do so? And that's where things get hairy, because if you think about a lot about how our brains work, about how human brains do things, human brains also learn in a similar fashion. And so is it like if somebody said you don't have permission to look at my pictures, I mean, it depends. Like, I mean, like if something that's like public on again, wading into very noodly complex language and things like that make it more difficult to have a really productive conversation with the ways that we're talking about it now. And it feels like to a lot of people that our discussion about this technology is that it's just bad, and it's bad because it's bad, and it's bad because that's bad, and without any deeper understanding, and then it just turns into a blanket rejection of the entire technology as a whole. And I think that that's an incomplete way of covering these things, but that's complicated. And of course, also there's a lot of confirmation bias and motivated reasoning at play too, and not like not in a way that's not understandable. Like there's a lot of small business owners like or independent freelance concept artists and stuff like that if this technology was embraced without any safeguards whatsoever, would basically be the end of their careers, or at least it would be enough of an attack on their ability to make money that they probably wouldn't be able to do what they're doing as a career. Which is obviously not something you want, because not only is it bad for for them, because they need to eat, they need to pay bills, and art is how they do it, but also it also means that it's dissuading people from making art, which the one thing that these sort of these programs can't do is make something from nothing. They need that sort of data set, that learning set, in order to make the stuff that they make. Now, you could argue that humans also need that in a certain way, but it's a lot more complicated than that. But even so, without humans to sort of make the art that it uses as a metric to tell whether or not what they're making looks good or not, then we just sort of enter into sort of a stagnant field where people don't make the stuff anymore. Obviously, everyone's going to make art because art is like a almost base human need, rather than and people will always want their art to be seen publicly. And if you want it to be seen publicly, then that means it can be downloaded, it can be studied by machine learning algorithms. Yeah. So that was my computer science lecture on the nature of artificial intelligence research and the lexical gap we have for understanding the ways that this stuff functions. See, I had an idea to make a video about this at some point, but I don't really know when I would be able to do that. But I think that it's an important video to make. But it's also a video that does not belong on Step Back. Correct? Like, it definitely doesn't fit Step Back's, sort of elevator pitch. So, yeah. You don't like the dubstep playlist? Alright, let's see if we can get something that's less... I didn't know people hated dubstep so much. Alright, let's see if this one works. Alright. Alright, so that was about half an hour to talk about nothing, or to talk about the state of a technology to mathematics that I only half understand myself. But machine learning was definitely part of my my PhD work. And so I was learning the basics of linear algebra and that kind of stuff as part of my dissertation work. So I have a little bit of maybe an AI video could go up on Tristan Won't Shut Up if the channel's still around. So I haven't done this officially yet, but what I'll talk about when it comes to Tristan Won't Shut Up is that one of the things that is also a thing that a lot of creators are going to be doing in the new year is making companion videos on Nebula for our content. It's not out yet on YouTube, but Jacob Geller has a new video out, and Jacob Geller's new video has a Jacob Geller like has like he made a second companion video to go with it, and I think that like I might rephrase Tristan Won't Shut Up as like a series of either like one-off ideas or companion videos for Step Back videos that I can put onto Nebula, so that I can, you know, get them conversions up and pay the bills. And you know, that Nebula might be a place where something like this would do better anyway, because then I'm not restricted by like, you know, YouTube's algorithms that basically tell me that I can make like two videos about like two things and that's it. So, and I was thinking of calling those companion videos Tristan Won't Shut Up. That new video just got uploaded? Okay. Jacob Geller's new video on space lasers is pretty great, though. Especially because it has a long discussion about Akira, and Akira is like one of my favorite movies. Yeah, that makes sense. Nebula is actually really inexpensive, and I used it constantly. Almost all my favorite creators are on there. Yeah, and in the future, it's going to be really like their design. It's being designed in a way so that converting people to Nebula can work in a way that's almost like Patreon, where if you you know, sign up for Nebula via their channel link or their video link, then they would get like a part of what you pay for Nebula as long as you're signed up for it. And it sort of works like a Patreon. I can't go into I don't know how public that is yet, so I don't want to go too much into it, but that's sort of like an idea of how that's kind of going forward. Because we're, yeah. So that's where we're so yeah, I want to make some content for I want to make some content that really wouldn't work on YouTube or wouldn't work with YouTube given how it's pigeonholed me, and Nebula seems like a really good place to do it. And I don't think it's too much of a paywall because, as Kevin pointed out, it's a very, very cheap. Like if you get it on sale, it's like less than $1 a month. The only problem with Nebula is that you can't follow podcasts, but you love everything about it when it comes to content. That is true. Although I will say that if you have any kind of podcatcher, the Nebula podcasts do have links to the RSS feed. And the RSS feed you can just put into your podcatcher like normal, and you'll get the Nebula feed of that podcast through that. So, is Nebula also just better for all of you, or do I need to pick one to help? It's better for everybody. Like I don't need to. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can break down exactly about how everything gets paid out. But like, for example, like a portion of like what you sign up for does help the person who converted. But then also the amount of money that gets paid out to a creator based on how much time you spend watching their videos is much higher on Nebula than it is on YouTube. So like, if there is a creator who is on Nebula and you have Nebula, doing everything through that will be better for them overall. Maybe I should start actually answering some questions. First question I got here is, why have the Bolsonarists been able to keep up their energy despite their leader not disputing his loss months ago? I don't know, actually. I haven't kept as close enough tabs on what's going on with the Bolsonaro sort of backlash. I know that there was like a really weak attempted coup, but I don't know. I think you would need to talk to somebody who knows more about what's going on in Brazil, but from like, you know, despite the weird like attempted Capitol riot, it seems like that it's, you know, knock on wood, less intense than what happened in America. But there's also the whole thing that like Brazil has less of a democratic tradition. Like it's only had democracy for, you know, like about 30 something years. So like I feel like it stopped being a military dictatorship in like the 80s or something like that. So so that is like that's a way that's like sort of how that works. And so what happens is that if you have a less, like if your democratic tradition is less old, then it tends to mean that, like, you know, if there's a time when the country wasn't a democracy in living memory, then the door is more open for things like coups and overthrows of the government if the election doesn't work out. And you know, faith in the democratic government as not just like a thing that's established, but as like something that is like part of like an experiment that can be failed, then like a lot more is established of like, oh, well, like this is like a thing that's a little bit more normalized. So maybe that's the reason. All right. History is full of instances where technology doesn't have its full potential realized even when it's matured enough for wide use. For example, electric trains have been around since the late Victorian era, and in 1903, a German electric rail car set a world speed record of 130 miles per hour, 210 kilometers per hour. But trains were only running at those speeds regularly in the 1960s when the Tokaido Shinkansen was built. Can you think of any other examples like this, and what technologies do you think were the case of today? Oh, yeah, there are definitely a lot of technologies that you can talk about that. It's part of this this theory in it's part of this like theory in technological history, or in like the sort of study of invention and innovation, which is called the adjacent possible. Basically, there's this idea that like that our entire idea space, you know, the idea, like the things that we can conceive of and that we can build off of technology-wise, the things that will actually turn out to be successful in the short term have to be part of the adjacent possible. And those always end up being inventions that for some reason or other, usually because they need other forms of technology to really get the real genius behind them to work, then that, like, you know, that doesn't come through. Like electric cars are like 100 years old, but the state of battery technology and the electrical infrastructure has never, to this day, is still not at a place where full conversion to electric cars would just work if we did it tomorrow. That's why, like, part of like converting to electric cars would involve building an entirely new electrical infrastructure, which is something that's very overstated anyway. But the thing is that the adjacent possible always is part of the thing. But there are times when people think of things that are sort of outside of the adjacent possible, where they think of something that will be a very successful invention, that will be a very useful technology, but because it doesn't have the sort of other technologies built up around it, it hasn't found its use case yet. And this happens a lot, actually. Probably the most famous would be the Lovelace engine, which was based on some other engine. But basically, it was an idea of using a pre-program. Like, this guy invented a way to make like weaving things, or like making knitting things, cloth. That's what I'm going for. Of making cloth, but making the pattern work through a pre-programmed set of instructions, like kind of like a player piano type idea, but a bit more sophisticated, and one that you could change up. And Ada Lovelace took this idea and was like, actually, if you were to take this like machine, like this engine that's used for developing sort of patterns of textiles, you could use it. If you made them instructions, you could use this to be a sort of difference engine and like a sort of like machine that does calculations. And she wrote like a whole language to sort of do that in this machine. And what she did was invent the first, like she conceived of, she never actually built, but basically what she was thinking of was the first computer. The problem, though, is that it was analog, and because of the way that it functioned, it would have been way too slow to really do anything that would be useful at the time that it was in. And so, like, the technology existed and it sat around, but it didn't, like, seem like it was that useful until we invented other things that needed to also exist for that to happen. Things like vacuum tubes and electrification in, like, a really big way. And, like, sort of the a lot of the difference engine, like, needs of World War II and fire control stuff that sort of came out of that. And then that technology that, like, didn't seem to make much sense, like, a generation before, then actually found a way to be useful. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. That's why a lot of people who are really ahead of their time usually aren't successful, because they see the use of something for a future that doesn't exist yet. You could argue a lot of Leonardo da Vinci's work had a lot of that, like his like flying engines and his like he made like a tool for doing blood transfusions and stuff like that. All stuff that didn't have the required other technologies to really function, but like would have been like breakthroughs if we had had other things that also existed. Which, like, that's sort of the tragic reality. All right. Maybe one day they'll find a use for blockchain. Yeah. Somehow doubt it. Blockchain technology is like the most ultimate solution looking for a problem in history. There's just so many people dedicated. Like, I think from what I can tell, like cryptographically, the math behind it is interesting, but there hasn't really been able, like, it could be that it's one of those things that does, like, fail as a technology because they tried to use it as a speculative asset. But, like, 300 years in the future, we find some weird use for the blockchain that actually does solve a real problem in a useful way. But it's definitely not now. If there are any technologies that are like that now, I don't... In many ways, the sort of nature of these technologies is that we can't really tell if they're going to be huge until they actually become huge, right? But, like, blockchain does a few very specific things, and obviously doesn't really seem to work in a form of currency, but if there is a use for it in the future, I couldn't conceive of what it is, but, the idea now exists, and it now exists in the proverbial mental tool belt of humanity. And if in the future there is a problem where blockchain would actually make sense, then somebody will think to use it. That's sort of the way that things work. Very often, breakthrough technologies that are very important tend to not do well in their first iteration. Wow, this is making me sound like I'm defending blockchain technology in way more than I actually do. Blockchain as it exists today with the computers that we have today uses way too much energy to be of any use whatsoever. And everything to do with cryptocurrencies has been an absolute disaster. All I'm trying to say is that we shouldn't shut the door that someday in the far future we might find a use for it that we don't really understand at this point. All right. What's a good place to start studying Northeast Asian history outside of Cold War / America based shit. I could not tell you. I'm not a person who studies like Northeast Asia. Are you talking about like Korea, like the Korean Peninsula, or like Manchuria? You're going to need to talk to somebody who knows a lot more about the region than I do. It's essentially just a ledger that you can add stuff while being unable to edit it. Yeah, basically. But like the fact that it like cryptographically keeps like adding to it cryptographically and like has a bunch of checks and stuff like that, so that like nobody can individually mess with that ledger at any given time, which means that like if you add something to it, like there's no way to add something to it that like other people wouldn't agree to get into it on that. That's sort of the idea. Which like, you know, it doesn't really work for currencies, but like I think I saw somebody who once like semi-successfully made a blockchain, not like a blockchain in like the way that we think about it, but made like a something like it for prison, for managing the prison economy, because nobody was allowed to have any money. So no one's allowed to have money no one's allowed to have like lots of money in prison, and they mostly like barter goods in order to trade things. So a couple I think like some Silicon Valley guy went to prison once for whatever reason, I don't know. And he had like a handful of people keep like a sort of notebook with like every trade that happened of these different things at any given time. And they would always meet up and like exchange it so that the ledger was always kept balanced. And that was a way that you could like sort of through almost like debt have a currency without actually having to, you know, hide like 16 packs of ramen under your bed or something, right? Which I thought was sort of like a clever way. But that's not exactly the way, that's not exactly blockchain in like the way that it's really meant, but it's the principle. Maybe the idea of a technology that's not going to be used right now, but needs other technologies to do in the future will be something like the Alcubierre, the physics behind Alcubierre stuff. So I have a feeling that if we ever invent faster than light travel, Alcubierre's engine is not exactly how it's going to work, but will probably be seen as like the theoretical beginning of how we do it. Thank you, by the way, 255 for the 5 British pounds. In Avatar 2, they use CG to Sigourney Weaver play a child character. Do you think that will become the norm in the future? Child actors are kind of a pain. I mean, aging and de-aging actors has already been used, is already like a very widespread use of technology. And as it gets better, they're definitely going to do that. Yeah. Child actors are not only hard to watch in movies, but they're also like difficult to like direct, and they're also expensive, and you can't have them on set for as much time or anything like that. But I haven't seen Avatar 2, and I don't plan to either. But I haven't seen that technology used in a way that still isn't really Uncanny Valley. Like Rogue One, where all of a sudden there's just a random Polar Express character in the middle of this live-action movie. All right, next question. Have I read The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wengrow? If so, do I have any comments or critiques? I just finished it days ago. I haven't read it yet. I haven't. Sorry. It's done. All right. Are we going to get are we going to get Elon Musk centered QAnon soon? I know it seems like a strong stretch, but he's tapping into a far right populist rhetoric, such as dismissing his critics as a shadowy group. That wouldn't surprise me. Elon has, if we've learned anything about Mr. Musk, it's that he is desperate for any form of validation whatsoever. And if he received validation by like full on supporting QAnon, he would do it. He is an extremely pathetic individual. How could Quebec preserve its form of French without the horrifying current and proposed language laws? That's a good question. So I'm guessing it's about how like Quebec has like this very, very discriminating set of laws, especially against Muslims, and also has these rather draconian like language laws when it comes to preserving the French language in Quebec. How do you preserve Quebec's language if it's not for that? And that is a good question. I feel like the only reason why Quebec doesn't fully speak English today is because they've gone to effort to make sure that everybody in the province learns French as their first language. Because, if you're surrounded by Canada and the United States, the cultural pressure is pretty heavy for that. A lot of that is, through their education system and through things like investing heavily in local media and stuff like that. But, yeah. Quebec is definitely a majority French-speaking region from the sounds of it. Yeah, it's about 80% Francophone. But the winds of culture might change that in the future. And if it wasn't for the fact that they have put laws in place to make it so that, like, for example, you can't send your kid to an English school if... The only way that you can send your kid to an English school is if both your parents are English-speaking as their first language. If you have one French parent, you have to go to French school. If you have, if one or both parents don't speak English or French, you go to French school. And that's the way they preserve the French language in the province. I mean, in some ways it's a bit more difficult. I think it's like difficult because like, in some ways I would think that maybe Quebec should invest in ways in making themselves culturally distinct that don't involve language. Because by doing all of this like draconian language stuff, they're definitely like hurting their younger generations from like opportunities and stuff like that. Although they do give quite a benefit for their young people when it comes to working in the federal government. That's important to note. But Quebec's but yeah, it's definitely not the optimal answer. And it has to do with the fact that French people see ethnicity through language more than they see it through blood. And so to them, like, the language is really important. Yeah, you attempt to preserve the French language, the Académie Française. Yeah, you want some problems? Just get me started on the Académie Française, which is for everybody. The Académie Française is basically an institute that dictates how French is supposed to work as a language. And there's a version of this for German, but the version of it for German is, first of all, there aren't as many like German speakers in various different regions around the world compared to French anyway. And two, like the German sort of like standard language academy is open to modernizing to make things easier and more acceptable. But French seems to have this, the Académie Française has like a dedication to preserving the language from change as much as possible, which has resulted in it having French having like one of the smallest vocabularies of any like language. Like English has about 500,000 words in its dictionary, and French has like something like 112,000. Furthermore, French has an extremely complicated has an extremely complicated grammar system that involves like a lot of very obscure verb conjugations, basically, and nobody uses it. Nobody uses it outside of formal writing. So what happens is that you have a bigger and bigger gap between the language as it is written and the language as it is spoken. And to write French properly is extremely difficult. And so that all causes a bunch of problems. Now, not everybody listens to the Académie Française. Like, Quebec doesn't really. I mean, I think that's how they teach their language, but the people in Quebec speak a completely unique form of French. Same with the people in Acadia. A lot of the West African French-speaking countries also have a very unique form of French mixed with a lot of their indigenous languages. So, it all, in some ways, the Académie Française is almost moot because its influence really doesn't expand as far as it wants to. Does Wallonia listen to Académie Française? I have no idea. I couldn't tell you anything about how, Belgium does things. In some ways, no. If I remember correctly, Belgian French has some unique stuff that the Académie Française doesn't do. For example, every time I talk to Belgian people in French, they have some very different words they use. Especially the one that sticks out to me the most is numbers. This is so I feel like I'm just talking about all of the subjects that is going to make the average listener to this podcast or to this stream very, very bored. So in French, the number system works weird, very weird in some places. For example, if you're basically translate directly, word for word, to French to English from French, basically the direct translation of counting by tens would be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 60, 10, 420. 420, 10, and 100. So that's for example, the French word for 70 is 70, which basically translates to 60-10. And 80 is 80, which means 420, and 90 is 90, which is 420-10. It's a fucking joke, right? It's the silliest way to do things. But in Belgium, you'll very much hear stuff that you'll very much hear some words that don't exist, like septante, which is 70, or octante and neufante, which aren't actually the Académie Française says that's not right. It's 420-10, but that's not the case in Belgium. And there's a lot of other Belgian also the Belgian accent always. Every time I meet with somebody and I'm they're speaking French and I'm I cannot tell you what this accent is. Almost every time I do that I'm oh, they're Belgian. Okay. I think also Swiss French is like that too. I think that a lot of those have that kind of stuff. But for example, German, the most controversial things that German has done lately is they're starting to try and edge out letters that are not found on a typical US keyboard. German is, people really don't like this. There are some people who are German diehards who don't like it, but Germany is starting to get rid of the letter esse, which is sort of a letter that makes the sound of two S's back to back. You probably would recognize that esse sounds sort of like a funky looking B. And a lot of the sort of German modernity thing, because it's not in your standard English keyboard, they're starting to try and get rid of that. And so it's showing up less and less, and they're finding there are more proper, they're making new proper ways to spell German words that don't use it. The other thing is this is the one that was being talked about with my German friends when I was an undergrad, which was there was a word like German has a lot of like compound words where you just smash two words together, and you use sort of connecting letters to do that. And there's a small rule that's like a bit of an exception, which is that if word one ends in a letter and word two starts with the same letter, that you would, if word one ends with the same letter twice, and then the next word starts with the same letter, that you would drop the middle one and you would just have two. And they got rid of that so that you can actually have now three letters in a row. The most famous one is the German word for ship captain, which is Schifffahrt. Schifffahrt used to be spelt like with two F's in the middle of that there, but Schifffahrt now can be spelled with three F's because then you don't have to remember a whole new rule to make things work. Hopefully that makes sense. And remember, because my German friends were not pleased with that change. They thought it made the word sound weird or look weird. Schiff. Is it not ship captain? Ship something. Schifffahrt. I'm trying to remember what that word is in German. Schifffahrt. So it's just a term for a maritime transport. But now it's spelled Schiffahrt. There's certainly some of you that think you love it. The thing is that, like, I probably don't talk about it much. I don't talk about it on Step Back because I don't think that a lot of people would like it very much. But I do, like, languages are like one of my most, like, I like languages a lot. I think that they're interesting. I think they say a lot about the way different cultures communicate and everything like that. And, I don't know. I like learning languages. And sometimes I can be very, I can pick them up quickly if I need to. I did one of those like sort of like more complex intelligence tests, and my strongest intelligence was linguistic intelligence, and so I can like I spy a lot. So to me, like verbal intelligence or language, whatever. But I can pick up languages a lot pretty fast, which is very fun. Like, that's why I've been dying to learn. Like, my goal someday in the future, because right now I'm just doing everything I can to keep my French from losing my French, because I don't get to speak it very much anymore. But like, I've been wanting to learn a new language that's not Romance and has a different alphabet. I've been trying to either learn Arabic or Hindi, but I don't know, man. I barely have time to do the stuff I am doing, let alone trying to learn Hindi. You know? Learn Farsi? Well, I feel like if I'm going to learn a language, I should learn one that is a little bit more widely spoken than Farsi. Like, India is going to become the most populous country on Earth this year, so I feel like Hindi is a great language to learn at the moment. Arabic is also, like, you know, one of the most widely spoken languages on Earth, and I think that would be really cool to learn as well. And then if I learn both of those, then Urdu, which is basically Hindi with the Arabic alphabet, would be very fun to go into. Amslan and Inslan, what are those? I'm Googling those. Oh, American Sign Language. I've never heard it called Amslan. I always heard it as ASL and ISL. Their scripts look so hard to figure out, though. It's true. It's true. Although, like, in some ways, it looks difficult, but once you start getting the idea of how they work, it's not the worst. Like, for example, Arabic. So Arabic reads from a like, you know, like Romance language perspective. Arabic reads backwards. Like, it reads from right to left. And the way that it works is that all letters look different at whether they are at the beginning, end, or in the middle of a word. And they connect into each other. Like, it's all cursive. So, and also Arabic only has consonants. And so if you want to have, like, to tell the vowel sounds, like if you ever see like those like kind of like little dots under or over Arabic letters, those are sort of trying to give you the impression of what the vowels are between those letters. So if you think about it that way, then that means that you can actually, and this is true with Arabic, is that you can compress a lot of writing into a very small amount of space. And if you get really good at Arabic, it all gets like you can do a lot of like you can be very fancy with this stuff, and so it's very much like that. Let me see if I can find if I can get let's see if I can show you some stuff. So like, yeah. So if you see, well, you guys can't see my fingers here, but if you can see, like this is the letter Aleph. So it's kind of like an A, and then this is a letter, and then this is a letter, and then this is a letter, and then this with the dot underneath, that's a letter, and that's like telling you like what the position of this is, whether it's down here, up here, or there's two, or there's three. Sort of gives you the idea of what the vowel sound is. And same here. So this is the same letter with two different vowel sounds, and then this is a letter with these two over it. And if I remember, this is like K, I think. But like that's sort of the idea. Like if you look at like here, like this is these I think are both ah. So that's like that's sort of like that's one letter, that's another letter. With that, like, yeah. But as you can see, if you once you see it and you can break down the shapes together, then it all crunches together and you can kind of get it. So that's how Arabic works. And I think it's really cool. It's also very pretty. Like, I don't think anybody can deny that, like, Arabic has one of the prettiest alphabets in the world. Like, look at this. This is gorgeous. Like, Muslims, because of their language or their religion, has a ban on basically religious icons. So they can't put like Catholics have like, you know, all of those like depictions of Jesus being crucified and stuff like that. They can't do that. It's sacrilegious to them. So they've like made like an art form out of their calligraphy, and just like look at this shit. This is so like the alphabet is just so cool to look at. I am very curious about how Arabic works how Arabic worked on typewriters. I'm very curious about how that worked. So, anyways, so the other one that you were talking about, Hindi, you're talking about how Hindi, the Hindi alphabet is also confusing, and I can see that too. But once you sort of see that, you can also get an idea of how this works. Now, the main thing about Hindi is that the Hindi alphabet always has a line that sort of connects all of the letters together. That's like the basics, right? Like, let me just get the... Welcome to Linguistics with Tristan, right after computer science. We're going to talk about everything but history today, apparently. So here's like the Hindi alphabet, right? So as you can see, like all letters in Hindi have like sort of like a flat line here, because then when you do Hindi writing, it all can kind of like looks like this connected line. Like you can see like every word can be very easily broken in this way, so that it's very easy to tell where words begin and end in Hindi. And it also like has a really good looking style to it. And I think that's really cool. But in the end of the day, it's like, this is a letter, that's ka, I think. And it's like, oh, it's right here. It's and ach, and yeah. Ooh. Hey. Yeah, so it's also, yeah, it's, I think that Hindi is a much easier alphabet to understand than the Arabic one, because it's not as smushy, but and it still looks really good too. I like that aesthetic choice. This is just me having ADHD and having a bunch of random things that I learned about and I want to share with the class. To share with me and 57 of my closest friends. Yeah. Is ChatGPT an exploitation of the techno-veiled exploitation like Amazon? What do you mean? What about Malayam or Georgia? I don't think I've seen these. Let me check. Be curious what it looks like, because cool. The Malay alphabet looks like it's got a lot of Arabic influence in it. Oh no, here it is. Close up of the, oh, it's the Keralan alphabet. No, okay, yeah, that's not Arabic. That's its own thing. Sorry, I got the wrong picture. Yeah. That's kind of cool. Very, very loopy and swoopy. I like it. Am I looking forward to the Dead Space remake next Friday? No. I'll be honest, even though it's like right up my alley, I've never played Dead Space. I have it for the PC. I just never got around to playing it. I usually don't play a lot of action-y, twitchy games. But I've been trying to change that. So maybe I'll play it at some point soon. I honestly don't play a lot of video games at the regularly anymore, sadly. Right now I'm currently playing. These are the games I've got on the go. I'm currently got on the go Bastion, which is sort of by the same company that made Hades. Sort of like an older game. It plays a lot like Hades. It's like, you could definitely tell that it's like, primordial Hades. And I'm playing a lot of Slay the Spire, Super Mario Odyssey, about halfway through that. Breath of the Wild, Torchlight 2, which is sort of like, it's made by the people who made Diablo, like the original Diablo games. If you play them on stream, you can write them off on your taxes. That's true, but the thing is, I'm not very good at video games, and I'm also not very entertaining while playing them. I feel like I would not make a good video game streamer. That's my suspicion, because I'm not very good at games. In fact, I'm actually like almost preternaturally bad at video games, or all games really. I like games a lot. I lose them almost all the time. Unexplored I've been looking into a lot, because it's a game design. It's not really like it's not like a really great game, but it's like a great, like it's a game that's made primarily around a what's it called? Like a game design dissertation about making certain types of level design, specifically for designing dungeons. And I thought that was a really cool, like, it's like a way to procedurally generate dungeons that have the kind of cool lock and key mechanisms that you see in like Zelda games, like kind of old school Zelda levels. And I was really curious about that, so I decided to get the game because it was really cheap to take a look at it, and it's kind of neat. Witcher 3, which I've been playing since 2018 and I have not finished yet. And I just picked up again XCOM 2 because I've been playing this. I have this tabletop miniatures game that I've been playing solo that I've been enjoying a lot, and it's been making me think that like I should go and look at my turn-based, tactics games again and see if I should start booting those up. What game had cool dungeon design? It's called Unexplored. It's like, what's it called? The guy wrote, there's a whole thing called like cycle-based dungeon design or something like that. I wish to hell gamers would stay out of politics. Fair. And I guess political streamers like me should probably stay out of games. Right? Will I do a video about Brazil? I did a video about Brazil in 2018. It's a brief history of Brazil. I think it was 2018 that I made it, or 2019. Maybe it was 2019. Yeah. But at the moment, I'm like trying to focus on topics. Like this year, I'm trying to not be as all over the place as I used to be, and instead really sort of double down on the subjects that I know are topics that people want to hear from me. So this year is going to be me focusing a lot more on videos studying the radical right, studying sort of American imperialism and like that kind of stuff. Like this video called, There's Always Been Trans People. It's sort of like a personal thing. Just because I got so moved by the sort of, moral panic that's been building around trans people that I needed to make something about it. My next video is a study of the radical right, because it's going to be about the concept of cultural Marxism and how it's not a thing. And then I'm moving into a video because that'll put me, if I can get everything on the timeline that I want, then for late February for Nebula, I'm going to be making a video on the Iraq War, because it'll come out at the end of March for YouTube, and that would be around the 20th anniversary of the beginning of the Iraq War. That's the plan, is to release it on the 20th anniversary of the Iraq War. So that would be that. I also have a ancient apocalypse. There might be a trans person in your chat. I would not be surprised. I mean, I think that you've said before that you're trans, but also I am blessed by my audience having a lot of wonderful trans people in them, and part of the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I know that there are a lot of trans people in my audience that are not having the best time right now, and I wanted to make something for them. So, you've been on my trans show. Sweet. Happy to. Yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at. So, so other things I plan on making this year while we're, looking for things to talk about is I do plan on, I have an ancient apocalypse video that I have started, but I haven't made a lot of progress on. And I have a feeling that by the time I actually get around to making it, the ancient apocalypse buzz is going to be thoroughly gone, and it's not going to do well. So maybe I think I'm going to abandon it at some point, just because I can't make it fast enough for how fast it would need to come out, which is, sad. Then I plan on making 2 videos about the Kennedy assassination for November, because this is also the 60th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination this year. And you know how I've been doing a series on presidential assassinations. So, well, a series. I've done 2 of them, and I'm going to do my 3rd one on the Kennedy assassination. And my hope is in 2025 to do the Lincoln one. So, yeah. Those are the main projects I plan on making this year. I gotta make more, obviously, but those are the big ones that have stuck out in my head. Let's see if I have any more in my roster. I still have to make some patron ones, like the USSR video, the sort of history of the USSR, brief history of the USSR. I need to finish my BRIC series by talking about doing my India and China videos, which I have read some stuff for, but I haven't really made much real work. My dead countries on USSR and dead countries on Nazi Germany. Those are 2 that I wanted to make. I have this video on the National Review that's been cooking for a while. I have another one that somebody sent me some stuff to read about on the basically making a video of the Jakarta method and sort of the fucked up shit that America did in the name of anti-communism in Indonesia. Tragedy of the Commons, you know. I have some idea of making a video about 6 Février, which was sort of like a January 6th that happened in France, where the French far right tried to take over the government. I think this was like back in the 70s. I do have some thoughts too about like somebody once, like I think that one of the things that I've been talking about in stream a bunch that has made its way to me wanting to make a video about it is about the Years of Lead, which was a period of increased political violence in Italy. But I want to talk about it as basically as a response to the fact that I get asked a lot if I think America is going to go into another civil war. And the answer I usually say about that is that I more anticipate a period that's like the Years of Lead in Italy. And then the next question everybody asks is, what the fuck is that? And so I could talk about that and Operation Gladio and sort of period of Italian history where there was just constant like terrorism going on, and like, you know, planes were getting bombed all the time. There were just random people getting shot in the streets by either communist or fascist guerrillas and stuff like that. So fun stuff. Wonder if something will happen to Bolsonaro now that he's in the USA. My guess is that he's going to be in a situation where he can't go back to Brazil, and he's just going to stay in the USA forever. Is there any room for interpreting Ancient Apocalypse being the transition from the nomadic culture that spanned the steppes, or does it have to be sci-fi? I mean, it would be a response to the Netflix show. I definitely have a lot to say about the Netflix show. It was very bad. Yeah. Basically, Years of Lead is a reference to basically Cold War Italy. Because people don't realize that during the Cold War, Italy probably had the strongest communist party on the western side of Europe. Like on the sort of, you know, American side of the Iron Curtain, Italy probably had the strongest communist party in the world. And there was a lot of stuff where like the Soviets were you know, giving money and weapons to Italian communists to try and, you know, turn Italy into a communist country at some point, so it can, you know, join the sort of Warsaw Pact. But then at the same time, the U.S. and the CIA was given a fuckload of money to stop that from happening. And they did something called Operation Gladio, which was basically a program where they were giving money and weapons to former members of the fascist party and like basically fascists of that day, and giving them basically the money and weapons so that they could do terrorism against communists. And what it led to was a lot of like assassinations of politicians, and just like a lot of like random violence that was based on like political stuff. That's sort of what the Years of Lead was. And my guess is that in the if the U.S.'s civil war, if it ever actually happened, would be more like a period where you have different types of political movements in America that are armed and more moved to acts of political violence, and you would have more sort of like politically motivated like mass shootings and like instances of like breakouts of violent activity between different American political factions. I mean, there's a much worse situation, which was talking about this video. Like, the thing is, like, what will happen is I'll start with this being the thing I want to make the video about. Like, this is going to be about the Years of Lead, and it's going to be about me answering the question about whether America will have another civil war. And then the Civil War question will take over, and then the Years of Lead thing will be like part of the video, and it'll overall be me doing an analysis about whether or not the U.S. is headed for another civil war, and get into a bunch of random stuff. So, which I feel like is one that people would. That's a video that I could make. I can almost guarantee that video would do well with my audience. I definitely have a strong feeling in my bones that one would do well. And definitely more people would click on a video that is about America heading to a second civil war than it is about like a Cold War guerrilla fight between different political factions in Italy in the 1970s and 80s. So that's going to be fun. Oh. So what should we talk about? Is there anything interesting going on? Have you heard of a fellow history tuber named Jared Framer, our history scholar? I have not heard of Jared Framer. Jared Farmer. I also have not heard of Jared Farmer. Geohumanist, place-based historian. So what's this guy's deal? Glen Canyon Dan, inventing Lake Powell in Canyon Country. On Science Mount, Mormons, Indians, the American landscape, trees in paradise, California history, flora, a modern history institute. Oh, so he's like an environmental historian. That's interesting. There's not a lot of environmental historians, and it is like a new and emerging field, so that's pretty cool. The Japanese PM that got popped as part of a CIA cult they started. Oh man. I can't confirm or deny that, but I know that you're talking about the Moonies, right? And I know that the guy who shot Shinzo Abe was mad because Shinzo Abe had this like kind of support for them that it then led to ruining the life of the assassin. I don't know. Feels like that was the most successful political assassination in history. Because not only did he succeed, but like he succeeded in a country that has extremely tight gun control by just building his own gun. And basically his political goal is exactly what happened. Like the response was almost exactly what ended up happening. The Moonies worship assault rifles? Dear God. I know that they own a very prominent right-wing newspaper. I think like it's like the Washington not the Washington Post, but like Washington Times or something like that. They own a really big newspaper of some kind. That's pretty wild. And that the Moonies are like are in pretty deep. The Washington Times, okay. What's it called? That the Moonies are in pretty deep with like American conservative politicians, and a lot of like right wing parties around the world, really. I learned about them because I took a class called The Psychology of Cults. Because for some reason that was the thing I decided I needed to get a credit in. And I remember learning about them in that class. I took a lot of classes when I was an undergrad that were about very strange things. I took psychology of cults. I took philosophy of religion randomly. I took a war on terror class at one point. I took a religion and politics class at some point. I took a Middle Eastern politics class at one point. Those classes were very fun. Oh, I took a graphic novels class at one point where we read comic books for the class. And I took another class that was an online journalism class. The online journalism class was very useful. I remember writing a glowing there was like, what's it called? I had to write some stuff I never thought I would ever need to write. I had to write a report on a sports game and I had never watched a professional sporting match before. I had to review Taylor Swift's Red in an article. We made a satirical. We also made a satirical newspaper called the K Street Journal, which was, I don't know if you guys know this, but in Washington, K Street is the street where all of the it's where all of the lobbyist firms are. And so we had this we made this fake like kind of like Onion like newspaper that made articles about like why tobacco is good and like why like various like very specific things are actually really, really good for you. It was very funny. What is it with cults owning newspapers? Well, if you want to, the thing about owning newspapers back in the day was a way to solidify your ideas, right? So, like, if you wanted your ideas to be made publicly acceptable, controlling the newspapers was a good way to do it. Am I keeping up with all the Phyrexian magic set? A lot of old planeswalkers dying, some good cards, while white weenies decks all around good. I am not. I'm not following it because due to recent events, I'm not super happy with Hasbro subsidiary Wizards of the Coast at the moment, and I'm not really into buying their shit right now. I really don't want to give them money to do anything. So that's basically like, you know. I also, even when I was into Magic, I did not give any shits about the lore at all. I just knew that I liked Phyrexians because I like evil robots that poison people. That was fun. Now, are these planeswalkers dying or are they being completed? Or completed. That's the real thing. They're joining the fantasy Borg. No, the only thing I've actually spent money on seriously this month is like I bought the Pathfinder core rulebook. So that I've been reading that. That's been the thing that I've been spending my time with. I'm not going to be able to get anybody to run or to play in a Pathfinder game with me, but I have been enjoying, like a lot of people who like tabletop role-playing games, I've been spending a lot of time reading about RPGs that then I will never be able to get anybody to actually play in. But now that there's a bit more impetus, like it seems like the group that I'm in is way more likely to not play D&D in our next campaign. It means that I have to make the case for Pathfinder. Isn't Pathfinder Advanced AD&D? The first edition was basically a patch for 3rd edition D&D, but Pathfinder 2nd edition, which is what I have, is it's its own thing. It's a much more its own system. It's still got a lot of, connective tissue, but it's still got a lot of its own unique stuff in it that I think is very clever. A video explaining that whole mess would be great for Nebula. Yeah, I wish I had an answer for that. The whole mess with Nebula, or with what's it called? With that would be wild. I know that there's a legal video about it. I what's it called? I helped out a little bit with that video. But yeah, I think how about some 40K? Oh my goodness, I'd have to take out another mortgage on the house if I wanted to get into Warhammer. There's no way I could afford getting into Warhammer. Plus, like, I am very bad at painting miniatures. As far as Pathfinder goes, I have bought the core rulebook and I have played one session of it online. And I'm hoping to it's going to be like a 2-shot, so we're playing again next week, and after that's done, I'm hoping to like really get into reading the whole thing, the whole 600-page core rulebook, and I'd love to run it or at least play some more, which I might just try to get some people online to play it or something like that, but because right now I only have I have 2 RPG groups going, and I really don't think I need a third is the thing. But the one group is in a campaign that has been going for 2 years, almost like it's been going for over a year. It'll be 2 years, I think, this like November. And so that campaign could still go for another year before it ends. I don't know. It's Curse of Strahd, but I don't know how close we are to the end of the campaign at all. And the other one is a group that has a very tough mix to find a good game for, because it's 5 people, and it is this mix of it's 5 people. One of them is, she's been playing D&D for years and years and years. She knows that system backwards and forwards. She'd be game for anything. 2 of them are Age of Sigmar heads, which means that they would be into some of the strategic assets of Pathfinder, so they might be into it, but it would take them a bit to like learn a whole new system like that. And then the other 2, basically, like the D&D game that we're playing is the most hobby board game most hobby game they have played since like Monopoly. Like they're complete normies other than this one thing they do. And they and to them 5e is too difficult for them for the most part too. So it's like there is no way Pathfinder is going to work with them. It is just it's too much. It's too much for complete noobs. And they don't like they're not into the hobby. It's just a fun thing they do as a social activity. So there's no way I'm selling a more complicated game with them. This is a group that I ran a Blades in the Dark campaign for a year with them, and they liked that one. But yeah, finding a game that makes all 5 of those players happy has been complicated. But right now we're running like a sort of first level or like a low level D&D campaign where they're like playing themselves in like a sort of, has anyone ever, I feel like I'm the only person who has read the Everworld books, but it's a setting I made based on the Everworld novels where basically they're playing themselves, but their soul is sort of in superposition with the real world. So they're playing themselves in roughly the year 2012, and they bounce between their lives in university and their lives like basically being in this world where all of the pagan gods of this world have like all the things of this world, all the like old gods of this world left and made their own pocket dimension, and they sort of built their own world there. And so it's a world where like all of like the, you know, where they are right now is basically all the ancient Egyptian gods have like built their own domain and stuff like that. So that's all still around. So that's like, and they sort of, their consciousness bounces between those two places. Pathfinder can kind of collapse down into simpler AD&D if the DM keeps the different levels of engagement in mind. Maybe. Although, are you talking about 2nd edition or 1st edition? Maybe, because maybe it'll work, but I have no idea. I guess if they're like, because like the thing is like, Pathfinder is one of those games where like, if you don't learn how the mechanics work, your character will just die. Like if you don't learn in combat that you need to do like teamwork and you need to like be, you know, stacking modifiers on each other and stuff like that, like you're going to die. So we'll see. My guess is that I might run some like assorted Pathfinder one-shots. And then when we finish the Curse of Strahd game, I'm supposed to be DMing the next campaign, and I might propose Pathfinder to them. But also, we were talking about it last week, and one of the players does not really seem all that interested in Pathfinder. Basically wants to play. If we were to play a game, he would want it to be a bit more of like a rules light, story focused game instead. Which, like, you know, fair, because I don't want to run a game where not everybody's having fun. What? Yeah, but I very much enjoy the system, and I want to play it as much as I can. But I also really don't want to... Like, I don't want to have to try and teach two people who have never played... Two people who, you know... This group has been playing, you know, RPGs together since 2021. And these two people still very regularly ask which dice is like the D12 and which one's the D20 and which one's the D6 and that kind of thing. Like we're still at that point with them, and it's been like 2 years. Like it makes me think that there is no great way to teach a game like Pathfinder 2nd edition to them, where I have to be like if your investment in the game is that 2 years in you're still asking which one is the D8 or which one is the D10, then saying, Well, you need to roll your d20 plus your proficiency modifier, which is your level plus your plus this number plus whatever item bonuses you have plus whatever status bonuses you have. Plus, if there's a circumstance bonus, you can also add that. And that is what you get from that. And it's like, oh, okay. That's going to be tough. Dungeon World is powered by the Apocalypse style. That's true, although it has more of an OSR feel to it, and I don't really want to play an OSR game. What I kind of want to play with them at some point is I found this game that's sort of like it's a powered by the Apocalypse magic school thing, because one of those really checked out players is a really big Harry Potter fan, but is also, on thin ice with the whole Harry Potter thing because of all the J.K. Rowling stuff. And so I was like, what if we made our own magic school story with just a group of us, and it was super trans inclusive and gay as hell, and I was thinking even making a campaign where the villain was basically a stand-in of J.K. Rowling, but and I'm trying to remember what the name of the game was. I just saw it on Amazon, and I was like, oh, it's like powered by the Apocalypse Harry Potter-y kind of game? Oh, I'd play that. But also, we'd also go back to our Blades in the Dark campaign. Everyone liked that one. Looking for the name of that book that I was talking about. This magic school. Let's see. Oh, Kids on Brooms. That's the name of the RPG. The other one that I was thinking I might be able to do with them is Savage Worlds, because Savage Worlds I think is crunchy enough that the Age of Sigmar couple, they will like it, and it's fun enough that I think that my D&D veteran, she'll be able to play it all right. And then the absolute noobs, I think that it has enough. It's low enough on the crunchy scale. Like, it's way simpler than D&D. And I think that they'd be able to get on board with that. And Savage Worlds can also be tweaked to play pretty much anything. So I think that might be the next thing I go with. Yeah. So Kids on Brooms is basically, it's, from what I can see here, it's basically like a Harry Potter game, but it is built on the system of the Kids on Bikes system, which is a RPG system for playing like a sort of like 80s kid movie genre. I don't know how it is mechanically, but it sounds, I can make that work. Your group's now willing to learn Pathfinder. That's good. Like I said, I'm in a situation where I want to run Pathfinder, but I don't know. I don't know if any of the groups that I'm in right now will do it, and having a third RPG group sounds like a lot. That makes sense, right? But my hope is that maybe I'll run a Pathfinder one-shot with the group that's doing Curse of Strahd, and that the person who is sort of ambivalent towards the idea of it will enjoy it a lot when he actually plays it. And if that's the case, because the thing is, like, he's really into the role playing and the care and stuff like that, and doesn't like thinks that Pathfinder would be too restrictive in like being able to do things more freeform. And I think though, but he also really likes making interesting and unique characters. And so I was thinking that if I propose, like, actually you can make like, I think there's like over 8 billion different first level characters you can make in Pathfinder. That'll, that'll get them on board. So we'll see. That group will have been going for 5 years this summer. That's wild. Okay, so we've got about 9 minutes before I gotta go. So what should we discuss? I know that RPG talk has been... I know there's some very patient people who are probably pretty tired of the fact that it takes over the conversation all the time. I was always of the opinion that the ideal game mechanics would vanish into the story. See, I also believed that for a while, but then a friend of mine I was talking to a friend of mine who was also like into sort of game design, and one of the things that he said, and a couple other things that I read at the same time, sort of changed my opinion somewhat. Because the idea of me running a Pathfinder game a few months ago would have seemed wild, because I was all about getting away from D&D and more to rules light, story focused games. But then my friend pointed out, like, hey, I like these systems more because the mechanics don't dictate how the story is going to go for you. All the mechanics do is simulate the reality of the setting, and then the story is however that mixed with your narrative instincts, and that is sort of why he liked it that way. And games that have more rules and crunch and stuff like that allow for more rules mastery, which means that a game can go for years and still be fresh and entertaining for the players. Because like, if you're gonna play like if you're gonna play a Powered by the Apocalypse campaign, it's probably not going to last for 3 years like my D&D campaign did. But a game that's more crunchy like Pathfinder definitely could. Because mastering the systems is sort of part of the fun. If that makes sense. I feel like I've completely alienated my audience now. It's like a solid 10 minutes of RPG talk. So, what do we round out on? Let me open up, see what twitter.gov is, what twitter.elon is talking about. Oh, did Hazel McCallion finally die? No, she's still alive. She's 100 years old. Jesus Christ. TTRPGs are a lot more common than you might think. Yeah, that's true. But, I also know that people don't come to me for RPG stuff. I'm not that kind of content creator. I I kind of made a very explicit decision to make my RPG stuff a thing I do personally for fun and not a thing I do for content. And but yet it's definitely like a hobby, and it's definitely what I spend a lot of time thinking about when I'm not working on step back stuff. So it takes over. Oh, great man history is a fiction. This is true. All right. All right. Well, it seems like I have completely petered out. You want to talk to somebody who has been convinced that Elon Musk is going to save the world with his money pursuits? Yeah, me neither. I have a very close friend who's like that. Or I have a reasonably close friend who's like that, and that conversation has never gone anywhere. To the point where I kind of just gave up on the conversation topic. All right. I think rather than drag on, we should just wrap up a couple minutes early. Let's see. Who should I be rating right now? Left flank vets. That sounds fun. All right, friends. It has been real. I'm going to send y'all to see left flank vets. And yeah. I'll see you guys next week. Keep it all together. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other, obviously. And yeah. Stay frosty. Be kind. Rewind. Etc.